I used to think betrayal came with noise. A slammed door, a broken glass, a shouted confession that at least had the decency to be honest. Mine came with airport flowers wilting in my hand, and my husband staring at the steering wheel like it was the only thing in the car that wouldn't judge him. My name is Ava Carter, I'm 27, and 2 weeks ago I found out my husband, Ethan Carter, 28, had an affair during his work trip abroad. Not with a random stranger, not with a coworker I'll never see again. With Madison Hale, the daughter of one of his company's executives. And the part that still makes my throat close up when I try to say it out loud? His family didn't call to ask if I was okay. They called to make sure I understood my role, to forgive, to smile, to keep the marriage intact so Ethan's career didn't get complicated. His mother was the first one on the phone. Her voice had that sharp, bright politeness people use when they're about to hurt you and want to feel righteous about it. "Sweetheart," she said, like I was 5. "Men make mistakes when they're under pressure. Don't throw away your life over one bad decision." One bad decision. As if I hadn't spent nights alone watching the clock drift past midnight, telling myself his short calls were just time zones, just deadlines, just stress. As if I hadn't looked at our wedding photos last month and felt proud that we'd made it. 2 kids from the same small town in Ohio, everyone saying we were meant to be, everyone rooting for us, like we were some local love story that proved good things still happened. Now those same people were texting me Bible verses about forgiveness. And Ethan? Ethan cried. He apologized. He swore it only happened once. Then he asked me, in the same breath, if we could keep it quiet, because Madison's last name carried weight. That was the moment something inside me went cold and still, because I realized I wasn't being asked to heal. I was being asked to disappear. And what I did next, after the calls, after the pressure, after I learned who Madison really was, left everyone in our town completely speechless. If you've never lived in a small town, it's hard to explain how a relationship can start long before 2 people ever touch hands. In Maplewood, Ohio, people don't just meet you, they place you. They remember your kindergarten picture. They know what your dad drives. They know who your mom used to date before she married your stepdad. They know which family you sit with at church, even if you haven't gone in years. So when I say I knew Ethan Carter my whole life, I don't just mean I recognized his face. I mean our families had been orbiting each other since we were kids. Barbecues, school fundraisers, football games, where the bleachers smelled like cold metal and popcorn, and every adult smiling like they were watching a story unfold exactly the way it was supposed to. Ethan was always steady, not loud, not the kid who needed attention, the kind of boy who had clean sneakers and a backpack that wasn't ripped, who raised his hand in class and actually finished his homework. He was the one teachers praised with that warm voice like, "Why can't everyone be like Ethan?" And I was the opposite. I was the girl who tried to be everything at once. Student council, volleyball, yearbook, the friend who remembered birthdays, the one who hosted pregame dinners and made sure nobody sat alone. I didn't do it because I loved attention. I did it because I loved control. When your parents fight about money behind a closed bedroom door and then come out smiling like nothing happened, you learn early that being useful is a kind of insurance. If you're needed, you're safe. If you're good, you won't be the problem. Ethan and I weren't close as kids, not really. We ran in different circles, but I always knew he existed, like a familiar landmark. And I also knew something else. Ethan had this quiet crush on me for years. I didn't notice it at first, or maybe I did and pretended I didn't because it felt easier that way. I was busy with boys who were easy. Boys who flirted loud and left faster than they arrived. Ethan was never that. The first time I really saw him was during freshman orientation at Ohio State. It was late August. The air was thick and warm, and the campus felt like a movie set. So many new faces, so much possibility. I was standing in line for a student ID photo, annoyed because my hair was frizzing, when I heard someone behind me say my name like it mattered. "Ava?" I turned, and there he was, taller than I remembered. A little awkward in the shoulders, like he wasn't sure where to put his hands. "Ethan?" I blinked. "Oh my God, you're here." He smiled, and it wasn't cocky. It was relieved, like he'd been holding his breath and finally found someone familiar. We started talking the way people do when they're both pretending they're not overwhelmed. "What dorm are you in? What's your major? Have you figured out where anything is yet?" He told me he was doing computer science, and his voice softened when he said it, like he didn't want to sound too excited, even though he clearly was. I told him I was going into marketing, and he laughed, saying that made sense because I always knew how to talk people into doing things. That day turned into coffee. Coffee turned into studying in the library. Studying turned into late-night food runs where we ate greasy fries on the curb outside our dorms like we were the only two people awake in the world. At first, it felt like friendship. Safe, easy. Then one night, during finals week, I was half asleep at a table covered in notes and energy drink cans. Ethan looked at me like he wanted to say something and couldn't find the words. "What?" I asked, rubbing my eyes. He swallowed. I've liked you for a long time." It came out quiet, almost embarrassed. And I remember this strange feeling in my chest. Not surprise, not exactly. More like a door opening. Because in that moment, I realized something. Ethan had always been there. Not like the boys who dazzled and disappeared. He was the kind of person who stayed. So I kissed him. Just like that. No speech, no build-up. 1 second we were sitting under fluorescent library lights, and the next, I was leaning across the table like my body already knew what my heart was catching up to. After that, it was official. And because we came from Maplewood, it wasn't just official to us. It was official to everyone. Our families were thrilled in that exaggerated way that made me both laugh and feel slightly trapped. My mom cried like she was watching a prophecy fulfilled. His parents hosted a dinner the first time we came home together, smiling wide and asking me about my plans, like they already saw me in their family photos. We built a life in Columbus after graduation. Ethan started as a junior software engineer at a tech startup. I landed an entry-level role at a marketing firm and climbed fast because I worked like my worth depended on it. Money was tight, but our apartment felt like ours. Cheap furniture, mismatched plates, Friday nights on the couch with takeout and a show we both pretended we weren't obsessed with. 3 years after graduation, Ethan proposed. He planned it like he planned everything, carefully. A scavenger hunt around the city. Little clues leading me to our old coffee shop, the library where he confessed he liked me, the park where we first said, "I love you." The final clue led me to the rooftop of our apartment building. He was waiting with roses and champagne, hands shaking just slightly as he got down on one knee. "I don't want anyone else," he said, voice rough. "I never have." I said yes before he could even finish. Our wedding was big, small town big, which means it felt like half of Maplewood showed up. My parents helped, but Ethan's parents insisted on paying for most of it, saying, "It's tradition." Everyone called us perfect. And for the first year of marriage, we almost were. We talked about buying a house. We talked about kids. We talked about the future like it was something guaranteed. Then Ethan got a major opportunity at work. A promotion, more money, more responsibility, more travel. At first it was just Chicago, New York, little trips that felt manageable. We made it work with daily calls. Until the trip to Frankfurt, Germany. 3 months. A career-making assignment. Ethan was excited in that controlled way he had, like he didn't want to admit how much it mattered to him. "I'll come back and it will finally be set," he told me, squeezing my hand in the kitchen. This is the next step." I wanted to be the kind of wife who supported dreams without fear. So I smiled. I helped him pack. I kissed him goodbye at the airport with confidence I didn't fully feel. We promised video calls every day, no matter what. We even set up a shared online calendar to track schedules across time zones, because that's what you do when you're trying to prove love can survive distance. For the first month, it did. He called. He told me about the city, the team dinners, the projects. He sounded alive. And then, slowly, he started disappearing. Shorter calls, missed calls. "I'm exhausted. I'm in a meeting. I'll call tomorrow." And in the gaps, something else appeared. Little clues I didn't want to look at too closely. A name in comments. A face in photos. A girl standing just a little too close. Madison. Back then, I didn't know what she was. I only knew she was starting to show up in my marriage like a shadow I couldn't catch. And the worst part? When I finally asked Ethan about her, he didn't reassure me. He got defensive. Like my instinct was the problem. Like my doubt was the betrayal. That was the first crack. And once a crack appears, you start noticing everything that had been holding pressure behind the walls. Looking back now, what scares me most isn't that Ethan cheated. It's how carefully I trained myself not to see the warning signs. Because nothing about the shift in our marriage happened all at once. It arrived in pieces so small they felt unreasonable to question. And I was very good at being reasonable. At first it was the calls. When Ethan was in Germany, we'd promised to video chat every night, not because we were clingy, but because consistency felt grounding. Proof that distance didn't mean disconnection. The first missed call came with an apology. "I got pulled into a last-minute meeting," he said, rubbing his eyes on screen the next day. "Time zones messed me up." I laughed it off, told him I understood, Told myself that successful careers came with sacrifices. Then the calls started getting shorter. 10 minutes instead of 30. Camera angled oddly, like he didn't want me to see the room. He'd look past the screen sometimes, distracted, his attention slipping like it belonged somewhere else. "Are you okay?" I asked once. "Yeah," he said quickly. Too quickly. "Just tired." Tired became his favorite word. I tried not to be the wife who complained. I filled my evenings with projects, reorganizing closets, starting house renovations we'd planned for when he got back. I sent him pictures of paint samples and backsplash tiles, trying to keep him connected to us. His replies grew slower. Sometimes hours would pass before I got a response. Sometimes just a thumbs up emoji. Then there were the photos. At first, I liked seeing him happy. Group pictures with coworkers, beers raised, city lights behind them. I told myself it was good he was making friends. That's when I noticed her. Madison always seemed to be near him, not centered, not obvious, just close enough to register. Her hand on the back of his chair, her shoulder brushing his arm. In one photo, they were at a beer garden, just the two of them. Steins raised, her head tilted toward him, his smile unguarded in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in weeks. I stared at that picture longer than I should have. When I asked him about her during our next call, his entire energy changed. "She's just a coworker," he said, jaw tightening. "Why?" "I don't know," I replied carefully. "She's in a lot of your photos." He exhaled sharply, like I'd accused him of something ugly. "Do you not trust me?" The question landed heavy. Because suddenly the conversation wasn't about her. It was about me. "No," I said immediately. Because it sounds like you don't," he interrupted. I apologized. I apologized even though my chest felt tight and my instincts were screaming. That became a pattern. Anytime I expressed discomfort, Ethan reframed it as insecurity. Anytime I asked for reassurance, he reminded me how stressful his job was, how important this project was, how lucky we were that he'd been chosen. And I wanted to be supportive, so I swallowed it. Then came the schedule changes. Calls canceled because of late nights, weekend plans that disappeared without explanation. When I asked what he'd been doing, his answers felt vague. Team stuff, networking, work dinners. He stopped telling me names. He stopped telling me stories. I remember standing alone in our kitchen one night, phone pressed to my ear, listening to him rush through a conversation like he was checking a box. "I miss you," I said. There was a pause. "I miss you too," he replied, but it sounded rehearsed. Not warm, not specific. Just correct. The doubt started leaking into everything. I found myself checking his social media more than I wanted to admit, watching who liked his photos, who commented first, who replied with inside jokes I didn't understand. Madison's name kept appearing. When I clicked her profile, my stomach dropped. She was polished, confident, international travel, elegant outfits, photos with important-looking people. And in one post, tagged at a company event, I noticed something small but sharp. Her last name. The same as one of the executives Ethan had mentioned once, in passing, when talking about upper management. I didn't jump to conclusions. I didn't confront him. I told myself coincidences existed, but something had shifted inside me. I stopped planning for the future as freely. I caught myself rehearsing conversations in my head, imagining explanations I didn't want to need. 2 weeks before Ethan was supposed to come home, he called me in the middle of my workday. My phone buzzed on my desk, his name lighting up the screen like an alarm. His voice sounded different, strained, careful. "Ava," he said, "there's something we need to talk about." My hands went cold. "What?" I asked. He hesitated. "I think it's better if we talk when I'm home." My heart dropped straight into my stomach. "Is everything okay?" I whispered. "Yes," he said quickly, too quickly again. It's important." After we hung up, I sat there staring at my blank computer screen, my reflection faint in the glass. I already knew. Not the details, not the names, but the feeling. That something had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. And that whatever he planned to tell me would change everything. I just didn't know yet how many people would try to convince me it was my fault. The day Ethan came home, I woke up before my alarm. My body already knew something was wrong. I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual, smoothing my hair, changing my shirt twice, like presentation might somehow control outcome. I told myself I was being dramatic, that married people had hard conversations all the time, that whatever he needed to say, we'd face it together. At the airport, I held a bouquet of his favorite flowers, blue hydrangeas, wrapped in brown paper. I watched passengers spill into the terminal, families reuniting in hugs and laughter, children running ahead of parents, dragging suitcases. Then I saw him. Ethan looked thinner, older. His shoulders were tense, his eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on me, and flicked away almost immediately. He hugged me, but it was brief, careful, like he was afraid of what closeness might demand. "Hey," I said softly. "Hey," he replied, already reaching for his bag. The drive home was quiet. Not the comfortable kind of quiet we used to share. This silence had weight. Every red light stretched too long. Every mile felt like borrowed time. When we pulled into our driveway, I didn't turn off the engine right away. "You said you wanted to talk," I said, my hands tight on the steering wheel. Ethan stared straight ahead. "Let's go inside," he said. That's when fear settled fully into my chest. Inside, the house smelled the same. Clean laundry, lemon soap, familiarity. I set the flowers on the counter. They looked ridiculous there, like props from a life that no longer fit. Ethan paced the living room, running his hands through his hair, stopping, starting again. I sat on the edge of the couch, heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. Finally, he stopped. "Ava, I messed up." The words landed, heavy and dull. "What do you mean?" I asked, though my voice already knew the answer. He swallowed hard. His eyes filled, and for a split second, I saw the boy I fell in love with, the one who hated disappointing anyone. "I cheated," he said. The room tilted. My ears rang, like I'd stood too close to something exploding. "With who?" I asked. He hesitated. And that hesitation told me everything. "Madison," he said quietly. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because my body needed release. It came out sharp and broken. "Of course," I whispered. Ethan rushed toward me, dropping to his knees in front of the couch like a performance he'd rehearsed. "It only happened once," he said quickly. "After a team celebration. I was drunk. I was stressed. I stopped it immediately, I swear. Once." I stared at him, my hands numb in my lap. "You looked me in the eye," I said slowly, "and told me she was just a coworker." "I didn't want to worry you," he said. "I didn't think it would happen. I never planned it." I stood up. My legs shook, but anger gave them strength. "You let me doubt myself," I said. "You made me feel crazy for asking questions." He cried then, full sobs, apologies tumbling over each other. "I hate myself for it," he said. "Please, we can fix this. I'll do anything." I paced the room, every memory suddenly contaminated. "How long?" I asked. He hesitated again. "Just that night." The lie slid out too smoothly. I stopped walking. "Look at me," I said. He did. "How long?" I repeated. His jaw tightened. "A few weeks," he admitted, but it didn't mean anything. Something inside me cracked. "You shared months of your life with her," I said. "You shared parts of yourself you stopped sharing with me." He reached for my hand. I pulled away. Then came the sentence that changed how I saw him forever. "Can we keep this quiet?" he asked. "At least for now." I stared at him. "What?" "Madison's. Her father is involved at the company," he said carefully. "This could get complicated. I don't want rumors. I don't want people misunderstanding." I felt cold. "So your solution," I said slowly, "is for me to swallow this so your career stays clean." "That's not what I meant," he said quickly. "That is exactly what you meant." I asked him to leave. He resisted at first, insisting we should talk more, insisting he loved me, insisting I was overreacting. Then I raised my voice. "Get out." He packed a bag in silence. At the door, he turned back. "I'm so sorry," he said. I didn't respond. The next morning, the calls started. His mother first. Her voice was sharp, controlled, already convinced of my guilt. "Marriage requires forgiveness," she said. "You don't throw everything away over one mistake." Then his father, then his sister. Each call carried the same message, wrapped differently. "Be understanding. Be mature. Don't embarrass the family." One of them actually said, "You don't want to be known as the woman who ruined her husband's future." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about Ethan cheating. This was about everyone expecting me to absorb the damage quietly. To stay pleasant. To stay small. I hung up my phone and sat alone on the couch, the house suddenly too big and too quiet. The life I thought I had, our plans, our future, the version of myself that trusted without fear, had ended. And I knew the next choice I made would define who I became after. The days after Ethan left felt unreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. Time stretched and collapsed at the same time. Minutes dragged, hours disappeared. I'd look up from the couch and realize the sun had shifted across the room without me noticing. I didn't cry at first. That worried me more than anything. I went through the motions, showering, answering work emails, reheating leftovers I couldn't taste. My phone buzzed constantly, but I let it face down on the table like it might bite me if I touched it. When I finally did cry, it came late at night, sitting on the bathroom floor with my back against the tub, my knees pulled to my chest. The sound surprised me, low, animal, like something wounded and furious at the same time. I wasn't just grieving my marriage, I was grieving my certainty. Because what Ethan didn't just hurt me, it rewrote the past. Every moment I'd defended him, every time I'd apologized for asking questions, every doubt I'd swallowed so I could be supportive. All of it came rushing back with a new meaning. I kept replaying that one question in my head. How long would this have continued if he hadn't been forced to tell me? Ethan texted constantly. Long apologies, short apologies, voice notes that cracked halfway through, promises to quit his job, to cut contact, to go to therapy. I didn't respond, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't trust my own voice yet. I needed silence to hear myself think. The pressure from his family, though, was relentless. His mother left a voicemail that made my stomach turn. You're being emotional, she said calmly. This is exactly when a wife needs to show strength. Strength. Like strength meant enduring disrespect with a smile. His sister sent me articles about rebuilding trust. His aunt sent a message about men and temptation. Someone I barely knew sent a text reminding me that no marriage is perfect. No one asked how I was sleeping. No one asked how it felt to have your reality split in half. When my phone rang with my mother's name, I answered immediately. I hadn't told my family yet. Part of me was embarrassed. Part of me was afraid they'd hate Ethan so much there'd be no going back. But the second I heard her voice, my composure shattered. I told her everything. There was a pause on the line so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she said very quietly, "Come home." I drove to my parents' house that night. The familiar streets of Maplewood felt smaller than I remembered, like they were closing in on me. When I pulled into the driveway, my dad was already outside, arms crossed, jaw tight. He hugged me without saying a word. Inside, my mom made tea I didn't drink. My brother sat on the arm of a chair, silent but watchful. No one interrupted while I talked. When I finished, my dad exhaled slowly. "You didn't break this," he said. Something in my chest loosened. The next day, Ethan showed up at the house unannounced. My father opened the door and blocked the entry with his body. "I just want to talk to Ava," Ethan said, eyes red. "You'll do it from the driveway," my dad replied. Ethan looked at me like I was his last hope. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I didn't think it would go this far." "That's the problem," I said. "You didn't think about me at all." He tried to argue, tried to explain, tried to reframe it as a mistake fueled by stress and opportunity. I listened quietly. Then I said something that surprised both of us. "I'm not making any decisions right now," I told him. "But I'm not coming back." He looked panicked. "Is this because of my family?" he asked. "I can talk to them." "This is because of you." That night, lying in my childhood bedroom, I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. I had spent my marriage trying to be chosen. Chosen over work, chosen over comfort, chosen over influence. But the truth was, Ethan had already chosen, long before Germany. He had chosen the path of least resistance, and I was done carrying the weight of his choices. I didn't know yet what the future would look like, but I knew I wasn't going to disappear to make it easier for anyone else. If the first days after Ethan's confession were about shock, the weeks that followed were about pressure. Relentless, coordinated, exhausting. It started subtly. A text from a mutual friend asking if we could all talk things through like adults. A voicemail from Ethan's aunt reminding me how rare good men are. A Facebook post from his cousin about how marriage isn't disposable, posted at exactly 7:03 a.m., just early enough to feel intentional. Then it got louder. Ethan's mother showed up at my parents' house while I was out getting groceries. My mom told me later she stood on the porch, purse clutched tight, voice perfectly calm as she said, "I'm here to help Ava make the right decision." My mother didn't raise her voice, she didn't insult her. She simply replied, "My daughter doesn't need help understanding her worth." That was when the narrative shifted. I wasn't just a hurt wife anymore. I was now difficult, cold, unforgiving. A woman letting emotions ruin a good man's life. Ethan called one night, his voice tense. "They're saying you won't even talk," he said. "I'm talking," I replied, "just not performing forgiveness on demand." He sighed like I was being unreasonable. "You know how my family is," he said. "They don't mean harm." I felt something harden inside me. "They're not the ones who were lied to," I said. "They're not the ones whose reality got rewritten." That's when he admitted something that changed the way I saw the entire situation. "Madison's dad knows," he said quietly. "He's handling it internally." I went still. Handling what? I asked. The situation, Ethan replied. It's better if this doesn't turn into a story. A story. That's what my marriage had become to them. A liability to manage. I finally asked the question that had been burning in me for weeks. Did she know you were married? There was a pause. Yes. The word hit harder than the cheating itself. So she knew, I said slowly, and still pursued you. She said she didn't think we were happy, he replied, that you were distant. I laughed, sharp, humorless. Funny, I said. That sounds exactly like the version of me you fed her. He didn't deny it. That night, another message arrived, this one from Madison herself. A long text, polite, sympathetic, carefully worded. She said she was sorry I got hurt. She said she never meant to cause damage. She said Ethan had told her we were basically separated. I stared at my phone, my hands shaking. She never apologized for lying. She apologized for the consequences. And suddenly, the entire picture snapped into focus. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. Ethan avoided conflict. His family avoided accountability. Madison avoided responsibility. And everyone expected me to absorb the cost quietly so life could go back to normal. That was when I changed. Not outwardly, not dramatically. But internally, something shifted. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped responding to group messages. I stopped defending my decisions. When Ethan asked what I wanted, I told him the truth. I want space, I said, and I want you to stop sending people to convince me. He didn't take that well. You're punishing me, he accused. No, I replied. I'm protecting myself. The pressure kept building. Work became awkward. People whispered. Someone asked me if I was really throwing everything away. At night, I lay awake replaying everything. Every compromise I'd made. Every time I'd put the relationship first. Every instinct I'd ignored. And for the first time, instead of blaming myself, I got angry. Not explosive anger. Focused anger. The kind that sharpens your vision. I started gathering information. Screenshots. Messages. Dates. Timelines. Not for revenge. For clarity. Because deep down, I knew something worse was still waiting to surface. And when it did, no one would be able to call this just a mistake ever again. The lowest point didn't come with shouting. It came with exhaustion. The kind that settles into your bones and makes even anger feel like too much effort. It was a Tuesday night when it hit me, the kind of ordinary detail that makes everything worse. I was sitting on my childhood bed, laptop open, surrounded by half-folded laundry, the quiet hum of the house wrapping around me like insulation. My parents were asleep. The world had moved on for the night, and I was still stuck. I'd spent the day answering emails from work, pretending to be functional. I smiled at the barista. I nodded through small talk. I did everything a normal person does while their life is quietly burning down. That night, I finally opened the folder I'd been avoiding, the one where I'd been saving screenshots, messages Ethan didn't know I'd seen, timestamps that overlapped with our good night calls, photos Madison had deleted from her profile, but not from the internet. I told myself I was just trying to understand. But the truth was, I was bracing myself. And still, it hurt more than I expected. It wasn't just one affair. It was weeks of intimacy, jokes, inside references, complaints about me framed as concern, messages where Ethan talked about feeling free abroad, messages where Madison reassured him that he deserved happiness and that I would eventually understand. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a second life. My chest tightened so sharply I had to lie back, one hand pressed flat over my heart, breathing slow and shallow like I was trying not to spook something fragile inside me. I felt stupid. Not naive, betrayed by my own hope. I'd believed in us. I'd believed in history. I'd believed that knowing someone for years meant safety. And now every memory felt compromised. The scavenger hunt proposal. The vows. The way he used to say, I'm not like other guys. I realized something terrifying then. If Ethan were standing in front of me at that moment, crying and apologizing, I might still have folded. Not because he deserved it, but because I was tired of hurting. That scared me more than losing him. I didn't want to become someone who stayed simply because leaving required more strength than I felt capable of. That was the moment I finally broke down completely. No dignity, no composure. Just raw, heaving sobs into my pillow so I wouldn't wake the house. I cried for the future I'd planned. I cried for the version of myself who trusted without reservation. I cried because I missed the man I thought I married and hated the man he turned out to be. And underneath all of it was one brutal, looping question. If I walk away, who am I without this marriage? At some point, maybe an hour later, maybe 3, my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. I can't sleep. I feel like I'm losing you forever. I stared at the words. My fingers hovered over the screen. And for the first time since this began, I didn't feel pulled toward him. I felt empty. I typed back one sentence. I already lost you. I'm just the last one realizing it. I turned my phone off after that. No more calls. No more messages. No more voices telling me who I was supposed to be. That night, lying in the dark, something quiet but powerful settled over me. Grief was still there. Fear was still there. But beneath it all was a thin, steady realization. I could survive this. I didn't know how yet. I didn't know what it would cost. But I knew one thing with absolute clarity. Staying would destroy me faster than leaving ever could. The turning point didn't feel powerful at first. It felt quiet. The morning after I turned my phone off, I woke up before sunrise, the house still wrapped in that soft, early silence. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was. Then it all rushed back. The affair, the messages, the pressure, the version of my marriage that no longer existed. But something was different. The panic wasn't there. Instead, there was a strange, fragile calm. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table alone, watching steam curl from the mug. My hands were steady. That surprised me. For weeks, everything I touched had felt like it might shatter. That morning, I decided to stop reacting and start deciding. I opened my laptop, not to reread messages, not to torture myself, but to write. Not a post, not an explanation. A list. What I needed, what I would no longer accept, what was non-negotiable. Respect, honesty, boundaries that didn't bend just because someone else was uncomfortable. Later that day, my older brother stopped by. He didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't give advice. He just said, "You look clearer." That word stuck with me. Clear. Because that's what it felt like the fog had finally lifted enough for me to see the shape of my own life again. That afternoon, Ethan emailed me. Not texted, not called. An email, long, careful, structured like a proposal. He apologized again. He admitted he'd mishandled everything. He said he was willing to go to therapy, to transfer departments, to prove his commitment. Then came the sentence that sealed it for me. I just need to know you're willing to try. Because if you walk away now, everyone will think I'm the villain. I read it 3 times. Not once did he say, "I hurt you." Not once did he say, "You didn't deserve this." He was still managing optics. Still afraid of consequences. Still more concerned with how the story would be told than with the damage he'd done. I closed the laptop. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't about whether Ethan could change. It was about the fact that I'd already outgrown the version of love that required me to shrink. That evening, I met him in person for the last time. A neutral place, a quiet cafe halfway between our lives. He looked hopeful when he saw me. That hope broke something in me, but it also hardened my resolve. "I'm not here to negotiate," I said gently, before he could speak. "I'm here to be clear." He tried to interrupt. I didn't let him. "I loved you," I said. "I believed in us. But I can't build a future with someone who only finds their conscience after being caught." His face fell. "This doesn't have to end," he said. "People come back from worse." "Maybe," I replied, "but I don't come back from being erased." He reached for my hand. I pulled it back, not angrily, just firmly. "I'm filing for divorce," I said. "Not because I hate you, but because I finally respect myself." For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then his voice broke. "So that's it?" I nodded. "That's it." I stood up, picked up my bag, and walked out without looking back. Outside, the air felt sharper, colder, real. I sat in my car for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, heart racing, not with fear, but with something close to relief. For the first time since this began, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt unwritten, and I was the one holding the pen. The fallout didn't explode all at once. It unraveled, slowly, publicly, inevitably. Once I filed for divorce, the story stopped being something Ethan and his family could manage quietly. Paperwork has a way of making denial impossible. Lawyers asked questions. HR departments took notice. People who had been whispering started connecting dots. Madison's name didn't stay hidden for long. Someone at Ethan's company leaked the situation, anonymously, of course, not out of loyalty to me, but because office politics always turn personal scandals into currency. It came out that Madison wasn't just a coworker. She was the executive's daughter. And suddenly the affair wasn't just a moral failure. It was a liability. Ethan was moved off his project temporarily. Madison was reassigned to a different department for her own protection. No one used the word affair officially, but everyone understood. The same people who had told me to forgive started avoiding eye contact. Ethan's family went silent. No more advice, No more lectures, no more calls about maturity and sacrifice. When Ethan's mother finally reached out, her tone had changed. "We didn't realize how serious this would become," she said. I almost laughed. As if seriousness was defined by embarrassment, not betrayal. Ethan himself unraveled in quieter ways. Friends stopped inviting him out. Mutual acquaintances became distant. The story had shifted, and now he wasn't the misunderstood husband. He was the man who jeopardized his career and marriage for an affair everyone knew he shouldn't have been having. He texted me once, late at night. I didn't think it would cost me this much. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "It didn't cost you. It revealed you." After that, I blocked him. The divorce moved faster than I expected. No children. No shared property that couldn't be divided cleanly. The house went on the market. The furniture was split. Our life was reduced to logistics. On the day the sale closed, I drove past the house one last time. The windows were empty. The porch light was off. I felt nothing. And that, more than anger or grief, told me I was free. Back in Maplewood, the town adjusted the way it always does, quietly rewriting the narrative. People who once said we were meant to be now said, "She handled it with grace." Others said, "She was stronger than anyone expected." No one said Ethan was unlucky anymore. They said he was careless. And for the first time, the weight wasn't on my shoulders. I hadn't exposed him. I hadn't destroyed him. I hadn't taken revenge. I had simply stepped out of the way and let the truth do its work. And the truth, it turns out, doesn't need help. It just needs time. A year after everything fell apart, my life doesn't look the way I once imagined. And for the first time, that doesn't scare me. I live in a small apartment now, closer to my job, with windows that catch the afternoon sun just right. I've filled the space slowly, one piece of furniture at a time, choosing things because I like them, not because they fit some shared future that no longer exists. I changed at work too. Not dramatically, just intentionally. I stopped volunteering for everything. I stopped apologizing before asking questions. I stopped shrinking my opinions to make them easier to accept. And strangely enough, that's when people started listening. I still think about Ethan sometimes, not with longing, but with clarity. I see him now for who he was, a man who wanted stability without responsibility, loyalty without accountability, love without inconvenience. I don't hate him, but I don't miss him either. What surprised me most was how much of myself I had been negotiating away long before Germany, how often I'd chosen peace over truth, comfort over intuition, history over honesty. I used to think strength looked like forgiveness at any cost. Now I know it looks like boundaries. It looks like walking away without screaming. It looks like refusing to explain your pain to people committed to misunderstanding it. It looks like choosing yourself even when doing so makes you the villain in someone else's story. To anyone watching this and standing where I once stood, wondering if you're overreacting, wondering if love means enduring disrespect, wondering if staying quiet will somehow make everything better, listen to me carefully. If someone betrays you and then asks you to protect their reputation, they are not asking for reconciliation. They are asking for permission to repeat the damage. You are not cruel for leaving. You are not weak for needing peace. You are not obligated to carry someone else's shame just because you loved them once. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't fighting for the relationship. It's walking away from the version of love that required you to disappear. My story didn't end the way Maplewood expected, but it ended with me intact. And that, after everything, is more than enough.